Good afternoon. My name is Joon Kim. I'm the acting United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Today, we announce charges of fraud and corruption in the world of college basketball.
A bombshell dropped on college hoops today. Hello and welcome to Sports Night. I'm Andrew Chernoff.
And I'm Lindsay Goff. Just when you thought the spotlight couldn't get any brighter on U of L athletics, the Cardinal men's basketball program front and center once again.
No doubt about it. That's right, Lindsay. The university confirming today that its men's basketball program is included in a federal investigation for criminal activity related to recruiting. The investigation goes much farther than Louisville, though. Here's what we know so far. 10 individuals, 4 of which are assistant Division I basketball coaches, were arrested as part of a major FBI investigation that is centered around widespread fraud and corruption by the coaches and different apparel brand representatives. The college coaches arrested thus far are Auburn's Chuck Person, Oklahoma State's Lamont Evans, Arizona's Book Richardson, and USC's Tony Bland. It was not immediately clear who would represent them at initial court appearances. The FBI complaints, which have been made public, accuse apparel representatives and coaches of bribing student athletes and their families to attend certain schools, the terms of which involve attending schools branded by that company and then signing with the company once in professional ranks. Other charges include coaches receiving kickbacks for steering players towards specific financial managers.
So how does Louisville factor in? Prominently would be your answer. The federal affidavit refers to unnamed University 6, which has now been confirmed as the University of Louisville. There are 2 basketball coaches referred to in the documents, one of which is recorded on FBI surveillance video in a hotel room in Las Vegas on July 27th of this year, discussing the intricacies of funneling money to a 2019 recruit with an undercover officer, a cooperating witness, and an apparel representative, the end goal being to steer the recruit toward attending Louisville. That same coach on video also openly states that they need to keep the exchange of payments, quote, low-key because his team is already on probation. It's worth noting that Jody Dimling of CardinalAuthority.com tweeted on the 28th that Louisville assistant Jordan Fair was in Vegas and flying to Orlando for an AAU showcase.
In addition to that, the documents state University 6, again allegedly Louisville, had already agreed to similar terms with a player that committed to the program in June of this year, saying that in May, at least one coach from, quote, University 6, as well as apparel reps, an undercover officer, and financial advisors worked out a way to pay an All-American player's family $100,000 in form payments of $25,000 over the course of 2 years. Said player committed soon thereafter. The only player to commit to U of L basketball in June of this year, Brian Bowen, whose commitment was a complete surprise to everyone, including Rick Pitino, according to an interview he conducted shortly after the announcement. So, Lindsay, hindsight 2020, should there have been skepticism that this 5-star recruit came out of nowhere and said, I'm going to Louisville?
I mean, I think so, yeah. They said that he just called up the assistants and was like, hey, I'd like to come to Louisville. He was considering like DePaul and Michigan State, nowhere close to Louisville. So now that you think about it, yeah, it was pretty fishy. At the time, it was just like, wow, this 5-star wants to play for a Hall of Famer Rick Pitino, but maybe that's not the case.
Absolutely. There's always, it seems like at least as of right now, there's more to it. The most jarring aspect of the commitment, though, is it the timing? Because you know what's going on in the situation. It's June, it's late. Is it the alleged money that took place? Is it the fact that there's another scandal happening, an appeals process happening right now? We know this is going on, but this could add to it.
I think it's D, all the above. At the time, the timing was weird anyway. We were kind of like, you know, everybody else in the class is committed. Here's a 5-star waiting until June. Like, what's the holdup? What, you know, what's wrong with the kid? Maybe now we know. But yeah, the timing and the amount of money is staggering, $100,000, and you know they're arranging it all under the table. And then just the fact that there is another scandal, that's not good.
What does this mean though for this year's team? Because you look at this right now, does he stick on this team? Because now his name's out there, or at least it's assumed that's him. How does he fit in? Is there now a role with his teammates? I mean, there's now questions going forward with his future.
Oh, I think this changes everything about this year's team. If it does, we haven't confirmed that it's Brian Bowen, although the dates line up. If it is, he's got to go. He can't be on the team. He's not going to be able to play. And that certainly affects this year's team. Is there another postseason ban in the works? There are a lot of ifs and things that could happen with both the NCAA and the FBI. And the possibilities are limitless.
No doubt about it. And of course, a lot of people also reacting to the news today, Lindsay, with all of this news.
Yeah, U of L interim president Dr. Greg Postal issued the following statement a few hours after the U.S. Attorney's press conference. Quote, today, the University of Louisville received notice that it is included in a federal investigation involving criminal activity related to men's basketball recruiting. While we are just learning about this information, this is a serious concern that goes to the heart of our athletic department and the university. U of L is committed to ethical behavior and adherence to NCAA rules. Any violations will not be tolerated. We will cooperate fully with any law enforcement or NCAA investigation into the matter.
During the press conference this afternoon, Assistant U.S. Attorney June Kim said that the entire investigation was covert until today, but they had since spoke to and were working with the NCAA. NCAA President Mark Emmert issued the following statement this afternoon, quote, the nature of the charges brought by the federal government are deeply disturbing. We have no tolerance whatsoever for this alleged behavior. Coaches hold a unique position of trust with student athletes and their families, and these bribery allegations, if true, suggest an extraordinary and despicable breach of that trust. We learned of these charges this morning, and of course, will support the ongoing criminal federal investigation. You read that statement from Mark Emmert there, Lindsay. This is supposed to be the NCAA's job, I guess, to oversee it, because they sometimes will say, hey, this program doesn't have institutional control, but clearly the NCAA doesn't either, because these are their entities and they don't have control over what's going on there.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit above the NCAA's pay grade, if I'm being honest. They don't have subpoena power. And the whole reason that the FBI caught on to all of this was because it was hundreds of thousands of dollars transferring to bank accounts and money laundering. And the NCAA just does not have the power to really investigate that stuff the way the FBI does. Obviously, they're a federal institution. And they wiretapped, they bugged, hotel rooms. The NCAA does not have that power. Now, should they have known these things were going on? Absolutely. But do they have the same power as the FBI? No. So I'm not completely sure that they would have been able to find out about it fully, at least, the way the FBI did.
It goes back to one of those things. If someone calls you and says, you have to talk about this, 5 years probation, you can't coach, or 5 years prison, you're going to more than likely talk when it's the FBI.
That's a little bit more incentive to speak to them.
Now, there's a lot of people today that are debating whether or not it's a horrible day for college basketball or a great day because this has now been addressed and is going to hopefully be fixed down the road. What say you?
Hindsight is 20/20. I think we'll have a better feel on it in the coming weeks and even months. It's certainly going to change the sport. No doubt about that. Whether it changes, the one and done rule, or if it changes how recruiting works, there are a lot of different ways that it could change the sport. So I think it's certainly going to change the NCAA model. I don't know if that's for better or for worse. That's to be determined.
Absolutely. Time will tell. Now, let's get a former Louisville player's perspective now. We welcome in Tony Williams, who played for U of L in the late 1990s. Tony, just what were your initial reactions to the news today when you realized that the FBI investigation was linked to U of L?
I honestly thought it was a joke, like one of those prank social media posts. And as I started looking at more reputable sources, I realized that it was actually true what was going on, and we were actually named in the investigation, and it was quite shocking.
Tony, have you spoken to any other former players about today's news?
Not spoken. I've seen some speaking out from some of the former players, but haven't spoken to anyone in particular.
You obviously coached at Doss High School, have experience working with high school basketball players. This sort of goes right with that. I don't know if you've seen it firsthand, but from being in the coaching ranks with high school, how widespread is this? Is this something that actually happens more than we think?
I'm sure it does. I'm sure there are instances where a lot of schools don't get caught for doing the same things or even worse. I guess my frustration comes from the fact that we are trying to get through one situation, one scandal, and we already knew that we didn't really have a long leash as far as making mistakes And, 2 months later or more than that, here we go right back on the hot seat again. And that sucks for the fans. That sucks for someone like myself who really, really, in my heart, I'm diehard U of L to the core. It bothers me because, we should be trying to do the right thing so that we can get back on the right track, so that we can build our character back up. And it seems like, just one scandal after another, and it's just very frustrating.
What do you think happens next? What happens to Pitino, the basketball team, or what do you want to see happen with this program?
I honestly would like to support Coach Pitino just because I love Louisville so much. But being a former head coach on a high school level and being a leader, a father to a husband, at some point, the accountability has to go to the top. And unfortunately, this isn't just the first situation, whether we were guilty or whether we were innocent. This is, 1, 2, 3 instances where, there's a potential to bring shame to the city of Louisville, to the state of Kentucky, and to the University of Louisville, one which I've graduated from. And again, that brings a lot of frustration.
You tweeted out also today that you'd like to help be part of the cleanup process. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you speak to any former Cardinals that played before Coach Pitino got there, I'm sure if Coach Crum, he's probably catching big fish right now, enjoying the weather, and probably wouldn't want to speak on this. But I'm sure you get an understanding that we don't necessarily feel as much a part of the university ever since Coach Pitino came. And for whatever reason, and that could be a good reason or that could be a bad reason, I'm looking at it as a good reason now, almost like to say there's a reason why I wasn't allowed to come around. I had been allowed to come around the new coaching staff, the new regime, and Coach Pitino. And now I realize it was for my own good.
Now, this is an ongoing NCAA and FBI investigation. At the end of today's press conference, the FBI asked if you have any information to call their tip line. That number is 1-800-CALL-FBI or 225-5324.
Just getting started here on Sports Night. How much of this falls back on U of L Athletic Director Tom Jurich and this year's Cards? How will they be able to focus on the season with all of this drama taking place?